As the fire kept coming closer and closer and closer, we had a meeting and we said that instead of putting our people in danger, we're going to evacuate our people. So 200 and so people within hours were gone. Being evacuated was one of the loneliest and nervous times in my life as a leader. You never know. You always try to keep track of your elders, your children, the school, and everything else in your community. And the day after, driving through there, my community is like a ghost town. Normally you see people playing and going to school or going to the office or doing whatever, our busy schedules. There's absolutely nobody there, and that was for a month.
This is the fourth in a series of videos documenting the support Community Futures has provided to businesses, Indigenous communities, and not-for-profit organizations that were impacted by the 2017 wildfires in British Columbia. Among the most impacted were the First Nations. Scattered in small, remote communities, they watched as the fires consumed the surrounding land, destroying not just their economic livelihood, but their very way of life for years, if not generations, to come. Terry Deno is a band counselor for the Skeetchestn First Nation. He is also on the board of directors for the Community Futures Development Corporation of Central Interior First Nations.
Here's my community here, okay? And coming down and getting onto the highway, Cass Creek is right here, okay? And that fire started in this area and worked its way all the way through Slikataos and Skeetchestn, and just literally, once you get it in there, if you ever was drive that, you could see why that fire went so fast. There's so much fuel in there that it was non-stop. You can't stop it no matter what. The teachings that the children need to continue learning has been taken away just like that, taken away overnight. So how do we revive that? There's a lot of special things that grow in my territory that don't grow anywhere else, you know, and that, like I said, the language comes out of there, the stories, the drumming and singing, all the other things that we learn as Indian people come from that area, this whole land. So we gotta really give that a thought today. There's going to be things that are going to take many years to come back for us to eat, and you know, not just us that suffered the loss of our traditional needs, and that's not even including the moose, the other animals that live up there. They're all twig eaters, you know, and there's nothing up there for them. That right from all there all the way up and across. You know, and we rely on all those animals one way or another.
A quarter of our economy's gone. About a quarter of our territories got burnt. You know, we do share a little bit in timber revenues and stuff like that. Well, there won't be any timber revenues coming off there for 120 years, probably. We do get all our berries and our understory plants, our medicines, our game off that territory. There won't be much of that there for quite a while yet, too. So I don't know how to quantify that exactly, other than to say that about a quarter of Skeetchestn's, what do we say, non-conventional economy, because Skeetchestn does have a non-conventional economy. It's more indigenomics than straight Western science economics. Nevertheless, it's just as important, and a quarter of that has been affected.
Not only did the fires impact the economy, they also had a devastating effect on individual First Nations businesses, many of them small, family-run operations. Archie Williams and Julie C. Antoine raised cattle and trained rodeo horses on the Bonaparte Reserve lands near Cache Creek.
Our rangeland where we release from the forestry is 81% of it was burnt. So we are not able to put our cattle back on there for the next 3 years. Like in 2000, and we got them. We found our cattle, and I guess we must have been around August when we were finally able to get the cattle rounded up in the 2017 fire, and we rounded them up and brought them home, and we've been feeding them since.
You used to carry 10 brood mares, which we had to get rid of, because they had too many miscarriages from the smoke. They were affected by it, so we had to get rid of them. The whole family rodeos, that's how we became known in the horse world, so that we do a lot of horse training. Like every one of our grandkids and our son and daughter, they do horse training. And we've had horses come from all over, like Alberta, Saskatchewan, BC, Texas. We've had horses come from there. The big impact was grass. Like you've got 200 head of cows, 40 head of horses, and each and every one of those animals is going to cost you $5 a day to keep them fed. So, you know, when you add that up, at the end of the day, what do you have to do?
Because we're out of the range for the next 3 years, we're going to be out of pocket. We've already sold some of our cattle and our horses because we have to feed the rest what is behind. And so, you know, it's been the 2017 fire has really put an impact on what we should be profiting, and we haven't been. We went to, ended up at a meeting at Community Futures, and we filled out forms with them to help with getting, you know, more into egg recovery and those places like that to get our hay.
And was that helpful?
Very helpful. Mm-hmm. We, to this day, we're on a pension. To this day, before they came, we were spending our whole pension just on buying hay for our cattle because we had no way of getting hay.
The Community Futures Development Corporation of Central Interior First Nations is one of 3 Aboriginal exclusive Community Futures organizations in British Columbia. In early 2018, they received funding from Western Economic Diversification as part of the Wildfire Business Transition Project. George Casimir is the general manager.
I believe the funding was absolutely crucial at the right time because it's not always just about the money, it's about the communications and the services that you can provide while you're out there interviewing and filling out applications for Indigenous peoples. We assisted with business advisory services, even if it was as simple as introducing how to do your proper accounting or invoicing and just kind of knowing what your losses were and how to be accountable for, you know, what you do and keeping track and having the proper receipt books. And, you know, so it covered a lot of areas of discussion and it made a lot of people aware of the value of what they do in their everyday life and what they provide in terms of products and services, because it went right from elders giving speeches and collecting an honorarium for that valuable traditional knowledge, right to a hunter-gatherer who would hunt for the moose or the deer and process the hide for the drums. So from the meat and the drums and the finished products, you know, that were for trade or sale, it brought a lot of awareness to those activities and the value of them. There's right across the board, you know, from your berry picker to your hunter to your artisan who beads and makes the work, right up to an aggregate company who couldn't haul materials for a local mine because the roads were closed. You know, they lose on their employees, their trucks, and it was in the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. I interviewed an Indigenous forestry company in Williams Lake. They had to remove all of their equipment and shut down, so they couldn't fulfill contracts. So, you know, again, that's another bigger example of Indigenous business that were heavily impacted, and they're still recovering to this day.
One of the most important aspects of the funding from Western economic diversification is that it enabled Community Futures of the Central Interior First Nations to hire a team of outreach workers.
Most community futures call them ambassadors, and under our Wildfire program, you know, we were more of coordinators, and what we were able to do is go out and interview, you know, right from the smallest claims to the medium to the business, and as the forums are, there's one that's cultural and there's one that's business. So, you know, just decipher. I would say 95% of the forms that we done were the cultural livelihoods. So our team got to go out and interview and learn about their businesses and help them fill out properly the forms. And I think providing that level of comfort. You know, as I said before, we're one of 3 Indigenous community futures in British Columbia. And I found that when you're out in remote communities, sometimes there's language barriers, sometimes there's trust issues, you know, and it's not about race or anything like that. It's just about ability to communicate, because sometimes when you have First Nations and Indigenous in isolated areas, they're not the most trusting, and nor should they be. They have their own lives and their own communities, and that's what they're used to, that's what they depend on. So when you have outside people coming in and asking complex questions that they may not understand, it makes it difficult for them to, you know, complete them properly. And sometimes I found that if it wasn't one of our Indigenous peoples interviewing, that there would be a level of shutdown, and the communication kind of broke down.
I think it's really important, you know, like in First Nations culture, whenever you introduce yourself, oh, my grandma's so-and-so and mom, and, you know, they want to make that connection and that person with you, right? They want to know who you are, where you come from, and if you have someone in common that you know. And it's been like that for as long as I can remember, right? Like it is important, I think. And I don't know if we necessarily had that connection out in Williams Lake area as much. It was a lot more apparent here with the numbers we got. But we were pretty successful out there, and I think that was part of us wanting to have some outreach workers in those areas too for that reason.
What we did is we came on and helped with the Red Cross program for applications for cultural livelihood for small businesses and for nonprofit organizations. And what we did is we also got a few outreach workers in a few outlying communities, and we sat together and we had a meeting to say, you know, if we were going to be going out to communities, what questions would come to us so that we would be prepared to hopefully, you know, have a best foot forward in going out and having the answers instead of going out and trying to come back and find the answers. We sat down as a team, as a staff, and said, you know, went through the applications and sort of interviewed each other to see what sort of programs and services are available and what issues there may be in filling out the forms. And then we just started networking with the communities and saying, we have this program, if you're interested, please let us know. And then we had the community start responding to us and saying, yes, we need help, support, please come. And we started booking our dates to go around with the application forms. We also had a few workshops that we held, and we had those in a few communities that were also either evacuated or under evacuation order that had asked us to come in and said, we're looking at some ideas for how do we go forward with agriculture now. We've been impacted by the fires. How do we start again? How do we get involved in, maybe not only starting ourselves again, but growing food for our community and even becoming profitable?
We worked with Community Futures of Central Interior First Nations to put on agriculture workshop locally to bring people information that would be helpful for them in whatever they were doing, gardening or farming. And we brought in local experts like Mojave Kaplan with the seeds, and Aaron from Stein Mountain Farm Organics, and who's a really brilliant organic farmer. And the elders, we had an elder, Sharon Spinks, come in, and Yakuishton James talking about how people did things in the old ways, and more reciprocity and working together.
One of the communities that was hardest hit by the 2017 wildfires was the Unesitan, or Stone First Nation. Located in the Chilcotin region west of Williams Lake, their village lay directly in the path of the Hanceville fire. The Community Futures Development Corporation of the Central Interior First Nations traveled to the community to help them assess the impact and provide technical support and assistance.
Some of the initiatives that Unitsin Band has undertaken has been two major projects. The first one being installation of solar panels. They have now installed just over 3,000 panels, which will be up and running this summer, and that will help with sustainable energy for the community and for the future for financial reward as well. Another project that Community Futures has helped Unitsin with is their irrigation system. Due to the wildfires, a lot of their intake system and current irrigation system that they have in place has been damaged. So we wanted to assess the current status of their water quality and their fields for irrigation purposes. And what we found was that there was a lack of water that could be conserved for their greenhouses and for their fields. And we're looking at implementing a system to bring clean water to their greenhouse and also to their community, that they can, in turn, grow their crops for their animals and for their fields grazing purposes, and also for the greenhouse so that they can grow crops and sustain themselves with some agriculture initiatives for the now and for the future.
Understanding this whole area from here to the top, maybe that's another area that representatives could help us in, is understanding climate change. We have close to zero understanding in what the future looks like. What could we do in my territory to help and try to beat climate change? And this is an example of it. And if this is an example, what fears me is when you hear the news about wildfires in BC, they say it's a norm now. It's scary, and it's going to happen again. It's already started. I'm knocking on wood. It doesn't hit if it hits this side, we're done.